Good morning, friends. Continuing in the series of bilateral relations, today we will be doing our relationship with one of the most significant countries in the world, the superpower, United States of America. See, uh, this relationship has to be viewed from the larger perspective of Cold War. It cannot be viewed simply as bilateral relations because America has been a superpower. So what our kind of relationship with America determines how it is going to impact global politics as well, right? So I do not want to go much into the history and all that. So let us take our independence or slightly 2-3 years period before that as the base, right? US always had that goodwill in India for pressurizing England to grant independence to India, right? Take for example, whenever Roosevelt used to meet Churchill, he always used to pressurize Churchill to grant independence to India. And you know what Churchill used to say and all that, the very famous saying that within 50 years, these people with small mind are going to reduce it to all that. I That's besides the point. But this was one issue. Normally, Churchill and Roosevelt always saw eye to eye with each other on most of the issue. But India was one area where they never agreed. Never agreed in the sense Roosevelt always pressurized Churchill to grant independence to India, and Churchill was absolutely in no mood to grant that. Right? Then what happened? Why did our relationship with US deteriorate right from the day one? Right? Frankly speaking, US and India had nothing against each other. Right? It was not a relationship which was suffering with contradictions. Rather, this became prisoner to global politics. It became prisoner to our relationship with other countries. Like our relationship with Soviet Union affected our relationship with US. And US relationship with Pakistan affected US relationship with India. Right? So let us see what exactly are the events. See, differences arose between India and US right from the day one because of foreign policy perception. US wanted, because as you know, that was the era of Cold War. Again, I once again request, if you do not know what is Cold War, please listen to my lecture. It's a complete lecture on Cold War. You will get the entire idea of what Cold War is. As I said, without understanding Cold War, it would be impossible for you to understand the present day global politics. So the logic was Cold War. America wanted to contain communism, and both superpowers were trying to suck in other third world countries into their zone of influence, right? And India wanted to play a independent role in global politics, whereas on the other hand, Pakistan was more than willing to play the ball for US. It was more than willing to act as a stooge or a client state of United States of America. So it is quite naturally that Western countries, primarily America, became favorably disposed towards Pakistan. This certainly antagonized India. And by using the logic of Cold War, when America started supporting Pakistan on the issue of Kashmir, by default Soviet Union started supporting India, and this enraged America further. America thought that India is going into the fold of communist fold, Soviet Union, despite professing democracy, right? And we also gave them some opportunities, like we were critical of American domination here and there, whereas we always remained silent on Russian invasion of Hungary in 56 or Czechoslovakia in 68. We always gave benefit of doubt to Soviet Union. This, literally put a question mark across India's policy of non-alignment. But what is non-alignment? What are it? Does it mean it is same as neutrality? All that we will see when we cover Indian foreign policy, right? So, and secondly, as I said, America wanted India to join the Western Bloc, and India wanted to stay away from Cold War. So our relationship became little hostile right from the day one. And added to this, in order, this is area, the third point is the area where we unnecessarily antagonized America, right? This was again one of the serious mistakes of Indian foreign policy. We recognized China. We became the first non-communist country to recognize China, which was again not to the liking of United States, right? And subsequent events proved that this is one of the many blunders which our foreign policy makers committed at that time, right? With this, I am not opposed to non-alignment policy. Perhaps non-alignment was the best option then, right? I'll explain about this when I cover non-alignment. But certainly there was no need to recognize China when China was totally acting against our interest, right? Then as a result, obviously US support to Pakistan on Kashmir issue. As a result, Soviet Union started supporting us. Then there was diverse approach on Korean issue. See, on the resolution branding northern part of the Korea as aggressor on southern part of the Korea, India supported that UN resolution. But after that, US started during the course of that war, perhaps I didn't tell you when I covered Cold War, yeah, US dropped some atom bombs on the northern part of northern Korea, right? As well as on China as well, right? Branding China as aggressor. And here again, after siding with US on the earlier issue, India opposed this resolution of UN. So on Korean issue also, briefly we came together on the same platform, but again we diversified. So our relationship were quite hostile right from the day one. And India's friendship during the entire period of Cold War, right? Despite being non-aligned, India always gave benefit of doubt to US. India was quite hesitant in condemning the invasions of Soviet Union, whereas we were quite vocal when it came to United States, right? Then differences over colonial issues. See, in anti-colonialism became one of the important principles of Indian foreign policy. As a result, naturally, we were supporting liberation struggles in Angola, Namibia, and policy of apartheid in South Africa, whereas America, due to circumstances, found itself on the opposite side. As this is also the reason why these two countries drifted apart further, right? And for the time being, India and America came together for the time being in the year 1962 when China invaded India and grabbed Aksai Chin. During that war, India thought that Soviet Union might help India, right? Because it was, we kept on supporting Soviet Union on all international forums, much to the dislike of America. But the thing is that instead of that, Soviet Union made it very clear that it is not going to intervene in the war, using the famous phrase that choice is between our brother and friend. Means India is friend, China, since being communist, is our brother. So that's the reason why. That was the time when America even deployed their arms in Bay of Bengal and other places in the event of further Chinese attack, right? That also was the factor why Chinese withdrew, right? So for the brief period, we came together. And one more thing, in the year 1955, since China was literally treated like an untouchable globally, it is India which helped China come to the mainstream of the world opinion. And our political leadership committed another blunder, that is when UN Security Councilship permanent membership was taken away from China and America wanted to give it to India. India refused it and gave it to, said and the then Prime Minister committed one of the biggest foolishness of his life. That is, he said, though there was no formal proposal, it came through informal channels. I covered this when I covered Cold War. That is through, or rather when I covered China, through John Foster Dulles, the then Secretary of US, right? This proposal came to Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, sister of Pandit Nehru, and our permanent representative to UN, right? And Pandit Nehru refused it. And of course, this is not a coming from WhatsApp university and all that. There is a very specific documentary evidence for that. Just read Pandit Nehru's letters to Chief Minister. It has come in the form of a book. I don't remember the page, but year is 1955. You can refer to Nehru's letters of Chief Minister during that time, right? There he very clearly mentions that such an informal came and why I refused it, right? Although when asked specifically in the parliament, he totally denied it, saying that there was no such proposal, right? Obviously, such proposals never come in black and white or formally. Such proposals inevitably come in informal manner only. There will not be any records for that. But still, for all those who want records, they can refer to Nehru's letters to Chief Ministers. Year is 1955, I don't remember the page. Right? Then, this was the brief period when both the countries came together, but again India reverted back to its pro-Soviet stand, despite being non-aligned. Right? So these are the differences. Then closed character of Indian economy. As I said, one of the many blunders and mistakes of Nehru, this was again a very, very big blunder of trying to convert our economy into socialistic pattern of society, which actually in reality created a monolithic state, motionless government, and perhaps one of the first kind of what should I say, state control. In fact, in many respects, it became more regulated than communist economies of the time, right? And that finally led to India's economic degeneration, stagnation in India, right? Finally, a fact confirmed by, the argument confirmed by the fact that his own party abandoned at least substantially, not totally, the socialistic impulses of Pandit Nehru's policies in 1991, right? In fact, I consider that to be the reason for India remaining backward and poor. Then India's growing friendship with US and all that. So our economy had that closed character till 1991. This also was one of the reasons for troubled relations with United States of America. Then, as I said, there was a lot of opportunism in our approach, where we criticize America for intervention in Vietnam, but we either remained silent or became very hesitating when it came to Soviet Union, right? Then American supply of arms to Pakistan. This was again one of the major point of discord between India and United States. But please remember, paradox was that despite these political differences, political diplomatic differences, there was all-round cooperation with it when it came to trade, when it comes to culture, education, non-diplomatic field. There was a lot of cooperation that was going on, especially their private foundations like Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie provided a lot of technical and educational assistance to India, right? And one more crisis came which literally brought both the countries together again for the time being. That was when India suffered food shortages. And these food shortages, right, when India turned towards even one of its reliable friends, Soviet Union, they were not willing to, send wheat against rupee. They were also expecting payment in international currency. That was the time under PL 480 agreement, America started supplying wheat to India against rupee, and subsequently they large stock of wheat they even gave free of cost to India. And Cooperation increased during the time of John F. Kennedy and General Eisenhower. In fact, General Eisenhower became the first president to visit India. There is a lot of confusion. Many think that it is Kennedy. Kennedy never came to India. It is Eisenhower who visited India during the time of Pandit Nehru. Right? So as a result, from 1947 to almost 1971, our relationship by and large were hostile with America. Of course, reasons were on both the sides. Plus, the thing with some brief period of improved relations here and there, PL 480 during the time of Kennedy and all that. But overall thrust was negative. Overall thrust of the relationship was hostile during this period. And this relationship touched rock bottom, what we call as nadir, during 1971 war, when America threatened India with a nuclear attack, and to follow up that threat, they sent 7th Fleet to Arabian Sea. Right? That was the time when India-US relations touched rock bottom. Right? Because it was supporting its ally, that is Pakistan. Soviet Union was supporting India, right? That further, drifted America apart from us. And that was the war in which United States openly supported Pakistan and threatened India with a nuclear attack. Despite attitude of America was so arrogant that they were not even willing to listen to India's concerns. Like there was huge refugee problems. 30 lakhs Bangladeshis came to India. It was a huge financial burden. When Mrs. Gandhi tried to bring it to the notice of Nixon, Nixon said, "We know it is India which has instigated this war, and if India goes further, be prepared for a nuclear attack." And thanks to Indira Gandhi, who did not succumb to American pressure, rather she withstood American pressure, and finally India defeated Pakistan roundly, and India succeeded in creating an independent state of Bangladesh. This was the time when our relationship were at the rock bottom. As you know, the subsequent events, because of imposing emergency, Indira Gandhi became unpopular. Right, she imposed emergency in 74, 77, elections were conducted. She lost that election. Janata Party came to power. As you know, Janata Party was conglomeration of 4 or 5 parties, primarily 4 parties, Bharatiya Lokdal, Bharatiya Janasangh, Socialist Party, Congress O. Morarji Desai became Prime Minister, who was basically anti-Russian in his orientation. Atal Bihari Vajpayee became Foreign Minister. That was the time when our relationship with America started improving. After Eisenhower, the then American President Jimmy Carter became the second president, only after Eisenhower, almost after a gap of 25 years, to visit India. Right? And of course, Indian leaders started visiting America. This bonhomie lasted for almost 2.5 years, despite the fact that America wanted to sign India on nuclear non-proliferation treaty, which though then Prime Minister, who despite being a pro-American leader, one of the few pro-American leaders, refused to sign, Morarji Desai. Right? But nevertheless, our relations certainly improved during Janata period. They were certainly better than what they were under Indira Gandhi. Right? And you know, Janata experiment collapsed within 2.5 years. Morarji Desai's government fell. Charan Singh came within 24 days. Mrs. Gandhi brought the fall of his government. Then there was election. Indira Gandhi came back to power with road roller majority. But this time she was far more mature in her approach, far more, less authoritarian and all that, at least apparently. So the thing is that everybody expected that if not improve, at least our relationships with the US are not going to deteriorate further, right? And perhaps on her own, Indira Gandhi would have followed that policy, but another international event changed all that complexion and compelled India to once again go back to anti-American tinge in its foreign policy. That was Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, right? Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. This again was the issue on which India and America found themselves on the opposite camp, right? And America wanted India to condemn Russian invasion, Soviet Union invasion. And you know, we had a long treaty with Soviet Union called 1971, the Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty, for 20 years, right? So India simply refused to revise that treaty and all that. And India either tactfully supported Soviet Union or remained neutral, right? And many times neutrality is also not all that neutrality. It is said that if you are neutral, neutral against whom, right? So Indian neutrality there was very clear on which side it was leaning. But anyway, there are compulsions, diplomatic compulsions and all that, compulsions of national interest. You can't rule out that. So you can't blame Indira Gandhi for adopting this kind of ambiguous approach towards Soviet Union, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Perhaps any other leader would have done the same thing, right? So once again, our relationship with US went back to the hostile trajectory, right? With that, then this continued for a very, very long time, and America indirectly started supporting separatism in India by providing shelter to militant groups in Punjab, especially Ganga Singh Dhillon in United States, Jagjit Singh Chauhan in London, and it was aiding Pakistan. Throughout the time, it aided the military program of Pakistan, gave heavy doses, and they kept on carrying with that money anti-India campaign, right? Not only that, one of the writers of America, many of you may not have heard about her, Jean Kirkpatrick. She came out with a document planned to balkanize India, that is to split India into 20 or 25 different republics, right? But luckily that plan remained on paper only, right? She had such a dangerous plan because during these years, again, United States was extremely against India during that entire period of Ronald Reagan as well as George Bush, right? So, because one more, besides these two things, besides Janata Party losing power, Indira Gandhi coming to power, and Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, one more development drifted these two countries apart, because in America, Jimmy Carter, who was quite favorably disposed towards India, who visited India also, lost power from Democratic Party, and Republican candidate Ronald Reagan came to power. And you know, he had his own rhetoric, and he was completely friendly with Pakistan, much to the discomfort of India. So these were the three factors which again made these two countries drift apart. And these situations continued for almost a decade. And finally, 1991, it led to collapse of Soviet Union, end of Cold War, right? That was the time, that is the breaking point. That was the time from where our relationship with United States started improving. Of course, there are reasons for that. The primary reason is that US was supporting Pakistan primarily as a counter force against Soviet expansion into West Asia. See, initially Pakistan and Iran became client states of United States. They literally served as a wall against communist expansion into West Asia. I'll cover this more when I cover West Asia, right? Of course, subsequently, as you know, in 79, Iran came out of the US fold, became anti-US, but Pakistan continued that way, right? So as a result, once Soviet Union itself collapsed, communism was literally wiped out from all over the world except China and Cuba. China also became openly capitalist in terms of economy, right? As a result, so that need for Pakistan was no more felt by United States, right? Pakistan's tragic importance in the eyes of United States was completely gone, right? So, in fact, United States no more required Pakistan. And that naturally resulted in improvement of India-US relations. That is the point from which our relationship started genuinely improving. And that also was the time when Congress under P.V. Narasimha Rao started the process of liberalization and economic reforms. So the closed character of Indian economy was slowly being opened. And that was also the time when communism collapsed literally from all over the world. Even some of the communist countries realized that state-centric development, the model of state-centric development, is a global failure. Socialism as a principle of statecraft has failed. And the Western democratic societies, the Western liberal democratic view won a decisive victory over socialism, right? Of course, there are certain Western interests, ideologically groomed intellectuals in India who would like to question all this, but I don't go by what this man says, that man says. As a student of international relations, I normally concentrate more on how process unfolds in terms of events, how events are shaped. And this was the fact. Even communist China had to liberalize its economy. Anyway, after that, as I said, these were the factors which started, a new chapter in India-US relations, right? And this continued for very, very long time. And to tell you that since then, there has been no looking back except for a brief period of 1998. I'll tell you what that event is, right? So except for this brief period, our relationship with US kept on, becoming thicker, becoming warmer with the passage of passage of each day, and both the democracies came together and their relationship was on top trajectory. Economic reforms and all that. And that was roughly the time when China started emerging threateningly on the world scene, because one of the rival powers to America was collapsed, right? But two other major forces were emerging against United States. And incidentally, both these forces were hostile to India as well. So these two factors also brought India and United States together. One was strong emergence of China, and another one was a rise of terrorism, which was drawing sustenance from Islamic fundamentalism, right? With this, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying entire Islam is fundamentalistic, but the thing is that there are a section of Islamic scholars who believe in promoting fundamentalism. It is this fundamentalism I am talking about, not Islam religion as such. In fact, more about this when I covered West Asia, right? So the thing is that these four factors brought India and America on the same page. So our relationship with US started becoming warmer and warm with the passage of day. This was the case during P.V. Narasimha Rao's time. Subsequently, of course, there were some brief period of Dev Gowda and Gujral, which was anyway not very significant. Then Mr. Vajpayee came to power, right? And this tradition continued. In fact, we became too close to US during Mr. Vajpayee's time, too close for comfort. That's why many left-wing oriented people started thinking that this is the wrong path we are taking. We must still be non-aligned and other things. But that did not conform to the logic of the time, right? So as a result, our relationship, but as I said, catch is for a brief period, our relationship with US deteriorated, and that was 1998, because For a very long time, it appeared to America that BJP is pro-American party. As a result, they will they will simply sign on nuclear proliferation treaty. See, whether BJP was pro-American or not, but certainly it was vigorously pro-India, highly nationalistic party. As a result, uh, America miscalculated that India will not go in for uh, nuclear testing, right, after 74. In fact, when India wanted to go in for this testing in during PV Narasimha Rao's time, roughly somewhere around 1994, right, then Americans came to know of it, pressurized it, and government of India was not so strong as it is today at that time to withstand American pressure. As a result, Narasimha Rao accepted it. But as I said, BJP as a party, with all, it must be having its own limitations, drawbacks, and other things. But one thing is there, at least public perception. In public perception, they want to be seen as very strong, no nonsense party with muscular nationalism and all that. This is the area where America miscalculated Mr. Vajpayee or BJP or all. And you know, Mr. Vajpayee had an image of being a very consensus builder, a very liberal person, liberal in a very extremist party and all that. So they were quite believed in all this. But as I said, BJP's their desire to appear strong in public perception is very, very intense. As a result, and of course, there are certain security reasons. It's not only about perceptions. There were fundamental reasons also why India went in for nuclear testing in 1998. Right? Now, this enraged America briefly for some times, and they started imposing, America along with their allies. Our relationship, which was growing with America, saw a sudden break in 1998. As a result, America and their allies, especially Western countries, imposed not only economic sanctions on India, trade sanctions, technological sanctions, all kinds of sanctions on India, right? But and they thought that we will succumb to this pressure and will not abandon our nuclear plan. But that did not happen. In fact, 2 days after the sanction, Mr. Vajpayee again went in for 2 more nuclear blasts. Thereby, he wanted to convey that we are not here to succumb to nuclear pressure. The international pressure. We will continue our nuclear program, which is consistent with our security, right? It is in that context, although formally it was launched in 2003, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee articulated his famous nuclear doctrine. Now, what is this India's nuclear doctrine, which has remained unchanged to this day? I'll be covering as soon as I cover India-US relations, right? So, once he articulated India's nuclear doctrine, Western powers were also convinced about India's intentions. Of course, by that time, India has developed sufficient clout in the global politics, and especially in order to show to the world that India can live without these sanctions, Mr. Vajpayee, called finance ministry officials and asked what would be the consequences of these economic sanctions, right? They came out to somewhere around $400 million or something. As a result, he launched a Resurgent India bond, which was oversubscribed by 50 times. So much of money came to India because, you know, I'll cover this psychological aspect about Indian diaspora when I cover Indian diaspora, right? They always wanted a very strong government in India. Whether really or not, at least BJP as a party gives an impression that it is a no-nonsense government. It is very strong, muscular nationalism. It can withstand to the pressure and all that. So this is one of the main selling points in diaspora community of the country, right? So that Resurgent India bonds were oversubscribed by 50 times, right? And with the kind of nuclear doctrine which he propounded and articulated, much of the opposition to India's nuclear program got evaporated because there was nothing inherently bad or wrong about it, right? So it became very acceptable to it. Now, what was this nuclear doctrine? As I said, I'll try to take up as soon as I complete India-US relations. So slowly, all USA was convinced. Mr. Clinton, when he met Mr. Vajpayee, he was convinced about India's intentions with the way Mr. Vajpayee articulated India's nuclear doctrine, and all kinds of sanctions, economic, technological, trade sanctions were lifted on India. And once US lifted it, all the allies of US, including Japan, lifted sanctions from India. And that is the time when once again, India and US started coming together and became thick friends. Time in all these treaties which Vajpayee signed with Bush, and in 2005 also we had a treaty with regard to organized crime, terrorism, narcotics, trafficking, and all that, right? So it was always on the upward swing, and to date there has been no looking back. In fact, our relationship with US is becoming thicker and thicker with the passage of day. A time came when Mr. Vajpayee said we are natural allies. Natural allies means naturally we should have been friends, right? We became hostile not because there was inherently anything hostile between us, but because of other factors, because of other nations, like India-US relations became prisoner to India-Soviet relations. US-India relations became prisoner to US-Pakistan relations. So once all this ground reality changed, our relations also changed. It is in this context Mr. Vajpayee said, we are natural allies, right? And this was taken further by Mr. Obama when he visited India in 2015. And from natural allies, he went to the extent of saying, India-US partnership relationship is the defining partnership of 21st century, right? And that is true also. We will see how it works out. Then these treaties, you can read it. There is not much. Even if you remember this much, it is enough, right? And then finally, in the year 2008, the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh signed a deal with the then American President George Bush, or that is India-US nuclear deal of 2008. Now there are many critiques of this deal. There are many supporters of this deal. Perhaps, if you go by the popular opinion, this was one of the important reasons which brought back Manmohan Singh to the power, again not with a majority but with an improved strength. So that shows it had a wide acceptance despite opposition from all opposition parties, including BJP. In fact, opposition to nuclear deal, why BJP opposed it is beyond my comprehension. Subsequently, in 2014, and one of their most articulate leaders, Arun Jaitley, he said, even I too was against BJP's opposition to India's nuclear deal signed by Manmohan Singh. In fact, he said he felt BJP should have supported Manmohan Singh on that day, on this particular deal. The word which he used is that it goes against the basic impulses of the party. That was the word used by Mr. Jaitley, right? And frankly speaking, I too completely agree with Jaitley on this, right? Because rank and file of BJP was not happy with this kind of approach which BJP adopted of blind opposition to the government at that time, that too on a topic which favored BJP's agenda, or at least BJP's policy. So the thing is that that was a huge breakthrough in India-US relations, under which India made many exceptions. US made many exceptions to India. Now, what India gained, what US gained from this nuclear deal, I'll cover that in greater detail towards the end of this. Just remember, that was from 1991 to present date. Our relationships are growing by leaps and bounds with the passage of each day. There was a slight break in 1998, but that break was for a very, very brief period. Today, India and America are not only natural allies as uh, as conceptualized by Mr. Vajpayee, right? In fact, it is operationalizing what Barack Obama said in 2015 during his visit to India, that India-US relationship is the defining partnership of 21st century, right? We will see that later. Then there are all kinds of defense cooperation between India, defense trade and technology initiatives which we signed. Then Obama became one of the first president to visit India twice, right? And then all these helicopters, smart cities, all these are the consequential benefit of this relationship. Chinook helicopters, surveillance helicopters are being given to India, right? All this. Now, what are the factors which actually brought? Sound theoretical factors. Besides all these statistics, what is important is what is the factors which brought these two countries together. For here, you please always keep in your mind points from 33 to 35. Why? Because India's look-east policy to contain China is in total harmony with US intentions to rebalance the power equation in East Asia. China is trying to encircle India with its string of pearls theory. India is responding it with look-east policy. Added to this, India's growing friendship with US, with China and Australia has created a strategic quadrilateral called Quad to contain China, whose desire are hegemonistic and counterproductive to India's security interests. Perhaps these are the factors which are the ground realities, and they actually brought India and US together, right? And this, since this aspect is not going to go out in the near future, so I don't see any possibility of India-US relationship deteriorating. Rather, it is going to improve with the passage of time. With minor differences will be there. Minor points of discords will always be there. Minor hiccups will be there. But overall thrust of our relationship will be always towards friendship, towards positivity, and towards increased cooperation. Again, I'll tell you the reasons for that. Right? Both have similar views on South China Sea issue. Both want freedom of navigation and maritime security to be safeguarded in the region. As I said, please ingrain these 3 points, 33, 34, 35 into your mind whenever you answer this question. Besides these specificities, India and US have shared long-term interest in promoting democracy, liberal values, countering terrorism, and containing growing influence of China. This point actually should be permanently ingrained in your minds, right? This is the point which reflects the present reality, right? So these are the factors which are going to keep India and US together for a very, very long time. Now, coming to India's nuclear deal, right, which India signed, in which Prime Minister Manmohan Singh put the reputation of his government at the stake. Even he put the survival of the government at stake, because at that time he was supported by leftist parties who opposed this deal tooth and nail, right? But still, and the thing is that what India got from this deal? India got access to nuclear fissile material technology, helps in launching credible nuclear energy program. It will open certain key high-tech industries like pharma, IT, space, and defense. Brought India closer to US and important European countries. India has been recognized by the world as an emerging power with stable democratic system and growing market economy. Ends India's nuclear isolation. These were the consequential benefit of this deal, right? So the thing is that then what US gained? US championed the cause of eliminating the isolation of India nuclear technology. It gave leverage to US diplomacy, showed that it has ability to dominate nuclear supply routes despite opposition from countries like China, Ireland, Switzerland, and New Zealand, right? Please remember, this is the kind of exception which US normally does not give to other countries, right? So this was again a major breakthrough, major step in the direction of improving relations, which anyway they were improving in that direction. It was the major step, that is India-US nuclear deal of 2008 under the leadership of Dr. Manmohan Singh, right? Then what has been the India's nuclear doctrine, right? I mean, besides India-US, this I am covering in the context of India-US relations. After going through this India-US deal, what exactly, why did America, which imposed sanctions, agreed to withdraw sanctions and convinced its allies to withdraw all kinds of sanctions? As I said, economic, trade, technological sanctions, it lifted in within 2-3 months. What prompted it? Because the way the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee articulated India's nuclear doctrine. Now let us come to that. What exactly is the doctrine, right? See, India made it very clear that you can't have a nuclear-free India in between a nuclearized Pakistan and nuclearized China, right? It is foolish to expect that India will remain nuclear-free when it is hemmed between these two nuclear powers, which are totally hostile to India. Number two, India made it very clear that it is for basically for peaceful purposes. Third, even if India is at war with any non-nuclear state, India will not be using nuclear weapon against that state if it is not nuclear. Even if India is losing its war, India will not be using nuclear weapon against a non-nuclear state. Fine, so far so good. What if India is at the war with a nuclear state? Right. Then the argument of Mr. Vajpayee was, India will not be the first to use it. Means we will use it only as a matter of retaliation. Right? That is, we will use it only if it is used on us, not otherwise. Otherwise, even if we are engaged in a war, we will be fighting that war in a conventional manner. Right? So it is more for deterrence. Right? In fact, he said the best use of nuclear weapons is not to use them at all, right? So it is more for the purpose of deterrence, and it is a common knowledge, nuclear weapons are more for deterrence rather than for usage, right? So and the word he used was India's minimum credible nuclear deterrence. What is the word used? Minimum credible nuclear deterrence. What do you mean by the term deterrence? Deterrence is inculcating so much fear in the minds of your enemy that it will think 100 times before attacking you. And this precisely was the argument of Mr. Vajpayee, that 4 arguments. There cannot be a nuclear-free India in between a nuclearized Pakistan and nuclearized China, number 1. 2, it is basically for peaceful purposes. Third, it will not be used against any nuclear power, even if India is at war with it. And fourth, India will not be the first to use it, even if it is fighting a war against a nuclear power, right? It will use it only as a matter of retaliation. And finally, the basic objective of Indian nuclear program is deterrence. Deterrence, not usage, right? So, and frankly speaking, world community didn't had anything against this particular argument, and they accepted it, and that is how all kinds of sanctions, whether economic, trade, technological, were lifted from India. And since then, as I said, there is absolutely no going back in the relationship between India and US, which culminated, which led to India, the famous India-US nuclear deal 2008, series of agreement in 2004, 2002, 2005, then in 2015 also. I've already listed out what these agreements are, that you can read them leisurely. And another significant event occurred after the visit of Obama Then significant event, please remember this date, 5th September 2018. Why it is significant? Of course, many newspapers and others may not have covered this particular event, that is 2+2 cooperation. That is, India signed a deal of COMCASA. COMCASA, C-A-S-A. What is this COMCASA? This is the latest. This India and US signed in the year 2018, September 5th. Please remember the date, September 5th. What was this agreement all about? See, I'll withhold my explanation of COMCASA for some times. Let us see what exactly are the points of discord between India and US relations, right? Despite the fact that it is what Mr. Vajpayee said, natural allies, or what Obama said, defining partnership of 21st century, right? There are very strong, solid core reasons for these countries to come together, and they have already come together. But that does not mean that there will not be any points of discord or disagreement. There are many issues on which there are certain serious disagreement between these two countries, right? But that in no way deviates it from the fact that it is the defining partnership of 21st century, and both are thick allies today. As I said, despite all this, there are certain pertinent points of discord. That is India's growing closeness to Iran, which is not to the liking of United States, because US considers Iran to be a enemy country number one, right? So as a result, and whereas India has a traditional friendship with Iran, and Chabahar port is very strategically important for India, right? Plus, Iran is also the oil supplier to India, next only to Saudi Arabia. So these are the things. Then outsourcing. Outsourcing has caused a lot of, heartburn in US. Many times job loss also they attribute to outsourcing. Then IPR, intellectual property rights, methodology of fighting terrorism. Take for example, America does not have an unambiguous stand on terrorism, right? They want to fight only that terrorism which affects them. Like they want to eliminate Al-Qaeda, but certainly not Taliban, right? See, if you want to fight terrorism, have a very principled stand. Unfortunately, America does not have that kind of a stand, the way India has or the way Israel has. Totally unambiguous stand against all kinds of terror. But the thing is that, of course, every country has their own compulsions. But anyway, this is also one of the reasons for discord between India and US, right? Now, I go back to COMCASA. It was, as I said, signed on 5th September 2008. Now, COMCASA, what is COMCASA? COMCASA is encrypted, protected defense strategic information about deployments, about submarine movements, about very strategically important defense information about the defense forces of countries all over the world. I'll give you just one example. Suppose if a Chinese submarine is coming into Indian Ocean, right? Its movement and everything can be tracked, and America can immediately convey it to Indian counterparts, since India is a member of COMCASA. And let me tell you, this facility America has not extended to any outside any of their normal traditional allies. India is the only country to reap the benefit of this, right? And there will be all-round cooperation, and this is primarily to contain China, which totally coincides with India's Look East and Act East policy, right? And if you want to know more about Look East Act East policy, please hear my lecture on Look East and Act East policy, separate, right? As a result, India gets some of the most sophisticated surveillance aircrafts, surveillance helicopters, plus India gets a lot of funds in order to provide that funds to Southeast Asian nations so that they should not fall prey to China. Plus, it is one of the, what should I say, one of the important aspects for our defense security. Most advanced communications will be sent by America to India about the troop movements, about the movement of the naval fleet, including the movement of submarines, which goes almost 100 feet below the sea. Right? So it is a very, very strategically important agreement which America signed with India, and there will be regular cooperation between defense ministers of both the countries and as well as foreign ministers. That is why it is called as 2+2 agreement. 2+2 means defense and foreign minister of both the countries. At that time when it was signed, the foreign minister and defense minister of America were Mike Pompeo and James Mattis, right? And from Indian side, Sushma Swaraj and Nirmala Sitharaman. Please remember, Nirmala Sitharaman at that time was defense minister, right? So this provides lot of security umbrella for India, and it is said that forewarned is forearmed. If you are warned in the beginning about the enemy movement, that is going to forearm your defense forces. And under this, India gets all kinds of help, all kinds of information. I'll be rubbing this minimum credible nuclear distance and deterrence, right? So the thing is that with COMCASA, all such vital, strategically important information will be available to India. Certain helicopters, certain aircrafts, naval aircrafts will be available to India for surveillance. Important data will be exchanged between both the countries and all that. So it's really very, very significant aspect in India's defense cooperation with America. But there is a flip side to it. And what is the flip side to it? It is CAATSA. Now what is CAATSA? C-A-A-T-S-A, CAATSA. CAATSA is one of the important aspects of COMCASA. Right? COMCASA, you just look into the books, your net, what is the abbreviation stands for? That is communication, advanced communication systems, right? Now what is CAATSA? CAATSA is countering American adversaries through sanctions. Now, if we do not follow the terms and conditions of COMCASA after signing it, then immediately CAATSA will be applicable to that country. In the present case, India, right? So there will be sanctions on India, all kinds of sanctions, technological sanctions, trade sanctions, financial sanctions, all kinds of sanctions, economic sanctions on India. And what are the problem areas here? As a result, America may apply CAATSA on India, but personally I feel it will not, although it may keep threatening India with CAATSA. One is, what is the bone of contention? One is Iran. See, it is the known enemy of America, and India has traditional relations with Iran for many reasons, and the currently two significant reasons are operational ownership of Chabahar port. As I said, why it is important, I've covered even when I covered India-Afghanistan relations. It is important because India wants access to oil and gas rich Central Asian republics like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and access to Afghanistan, through that even access up to Russia, right? So Chabahar port, India under even under the threat of CAATSA is not going to compromise on Chabahar port, right? So it cannot antagonize Iran beyond a point, right? And secondly, we are dependent, along with many other Arab countries. Iran is also one of the major suppliers of oil to India, and India's dependency on oil. More than 80% of the oil comes to us is imported. And out of that, 80% comes from Gulf countries. That's the reason why India is trying to diversify its oil basket. Anyway, the point here is Iran. Now, India, and second major reason for what America considers that India is violating the terms of COMCASA, as a result CAATSA should be applied to India, is S-400 deal with Russia, right? S-400 deal. CAATSA, as I told you, countering American adversaries through sanctions. Means if you violate those terms, you will be considered as adversary country of America. As a result, that will be sanctions will be applied on you. But on these two issues, India has made it very clear that it is not going to compromise. In fact, India took operational responsibility of Chabahar port in 2018 itself. Operational rights were given to India in 2018. Don't go by what is that you are hearing in YouTube or WhatsApp and other thing. That is all fake news. That India has been driven out of Chabahar. India, it has been given to China. It is a loss of a failure of Indian foreign policy. Nothing of that sort. These people are unnecessarily confusing you between issues. What has been given to China is rail link from Chabahar port to operate in a particular, and that too it is quite distant from the Chabahar port where India is operating, right? And even that project India would have got, but India deliberately allowed it to go out of its hand by not giving money on time. As a result, Iran waited and finally gave it to China. Why India did this? Because please understand, it is a delicate art of balancing its interest, and when it is faced with, when your allies are two hostile countries, hostile to each other, not to you, right? So there is a point beyond which even India cannot antagonize even America, right? So as a result, America, despite CAATSA, extended the time and said we will not apply it to India. And today they went out of the way to grant exemption in case of Chabahar port. In case of Chabahar port, they exempted it, right? And said we will not be applying CAATSA because they understood our strategic compulsions with regard to Chabahar. Now, with regard to oil with Iran, right? See, when Americans said you should not purchase it from Iran, the counter question was very simple. From where do you expect us to get this kind of oil? Because any developing country requires oil for its energy security, right? America requested their allies Saudi Arabia and Qatar to increase the supply to India. So as a result, today there is that loss of oil supply from Iran is more than counterbalanced by our supply from Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Oman and other Gulf countries. They have increased the quota for India. And added to this, despite this, I am told India is getting oil supplies from Iran, not much, but to, some extent it is getting, right? And, but far more bigger factor than Iran is factor of S-400 deal which India signed with Soviet Union, with Russia. Now, what is S-400? S-400 is a very, very advanced missile technology and you can release cruise missiles from this. You know what are cruise missiles? Cruise missiles are basically guided from computer board. You can guide it from there. And they have the capacity to hit the exact target. Not the same building, but it can even go and hit the exact window also. Such is the sophisticated capacity of the cruise missiles that will go out in this S-400 weaponry system, advanced weaponry system, and it is going to be a force multiplier for Indian Defence Forces. So despite the threat of Katsa, India went ahead and signed this deal with Russians, right? So now America is slightly cut up with India because of these two factors, but despite that, it has not imposed Katsa, although it is not clear whether they will be imposed, because there has been no categorical denial also that we will not be imposing. But as the thing stands, as the global situation is there, because area of concern for America today is Asia Pacific, right? And there our interests are completely coinciding with America. So based on that, I don't think America will go in for Katsa against India, despite Chabahar, and Chabahar anyway they have exempted it. Despite S-400 deal, America will not be imposing Katsa on India. So Kam Kasa continues to remain. Both Kam Kasa and S-400 deal, you take it from me, are going to be force multiplier for Indian Defence Forces. Hereafter, the most powerful army in the world also will think 100 times before thinking of any possible attack on India. Because of this, and added to this, India already got 5 Rafales. It is likely to get 12 and 15 more, and after that another 200 more in future, right? So because of these 3 things, India has developed Kamkasa, S-400 and Rafale. I think India has developed some sort of a Karan Kavach in its security armor, right? It will be very difficult to penetrate it. And I don't think any country today has capacity to do that unless it is on suicidal mission. So this is about Kamkasa, Katsa, S-400 deal, right? So today India-US relations are on upward trajectory. We are very close countries because on certain core issues like promoting liberal democratic values, democracies, containing growing influence of China in Asia Pacific, and fighting terrorism, global terrorism based on religious fundamentalism. On all these core 4 issues, India and America are on the same page. Of course, as I said, there are points of discord with issues even with regard to as small as H1 visa or outsourcing or patents, or it could be say with the issues like intellectual property rights. These are very minor issues between India and US relations, on which we are not on the same page. We are on the opposite camps, and perhaps even on the issues of global warming. These are the issues where we are at variance with each other. And within this, the major issues of discord are not the 5-6, the one which I said, but major are our closeness with Israel and S-400 deal. But I mean, thanks to Providence, that despite this, despite India signing Kamkasa, right, this is the one rare facility which America has extended to a non-NATO ally. So that with that you can gauge the kind of importance which India is getting in American foreign policy calculation, and largely because of situations in South China Sea and Asia Pacific. This quad between India, Australia, America and Japan is basically to contain China and compel China to abide by rule-based international order, right? So this is between India and US relationships. Now, what could be the questions on this? Possible questions could be a general question on India-US relations, for which you need not go too much into the history, and cover the latest points. Kamkasa, Katsa, S-400 deal, our growing closeness with Iran, right? These are the issues. Or you can cover it, mostly focus on after 1995 events. You can make a passing reference that yes, our relationship got deteriorated right from the day one because of different foreign policy perceptions, largely because of Cold War, right? This you can make it as an introduction. But don't waste your time in concentrating there. Cover more and more the latest points, subsequent points which I said. Even those points, India's nuclear doctrine, that deal also you can do not concentrate much on that, but do mention because they are significant points. And some of the agreements in 2002 and 2004, again, they should be passing reference, right? Concentrate more on Kamkasa, Katsa, S-400 deal, Iran, and whatever the points of discord. See, just because we have those points of discords, that does not mean we are not. We are thoroughly friendly country. We are, and our friendship is becoming thicker with the passage of time, despite those minor hiccups here and there. And sometimes there could be short questions on the latest events like Kamkasa or S-400 deal or importance of Asia Pacific, that is South China Sea, right? America as a factor in India-China relations. These are the kinds of questions you can expect, right? And nothing much, and don't go by history. So much of knowledge of history I provide only to enhance your understanding so that you can get a better perspective, right? So I hope whatever I have covered about India-US relations is clear to you, right? Thank you very much.